In my opinion, this is one of the coolest watches ever made. It features a brilliant red dial with an intricately embossed Japanese Yagasuri-pattern, which represents the feathers attached to arrows. And surrounding the dial is a striking black and gold dual-time bezel that features Japanese kanji numerals. It might sound like I'm gushing a little bit about this watch, but that's probably because I made it myself. Hey guys, this is Dave. Welcome back to Just the Watch, and today I'm going to be showing you the process I went through to build my own watch, and then I'm going to review the watch that I built. Now, this is a watch I've been wanting for a while, but I don't think anybody actually makes it, so that's why I decided to make it myself. And that's one of the cool things about learning how to do some watch modding and how to put a watch together yourself. You can get parts from a lot of different places online. I got all of these from Namoki Mods, who are sponsoring this video, so they actually let me just give them a parts list of everything I wanted from their site, and then they sent it over to me. So big thanks to them for sponsoring this video. There is a discount code down below if you're interested in doing this yourself. Now, being able to build exactly the watch you want is one really big reason to get into modding or learning some basic watchmaking skills like this. But I think for people like me and probably a lot of you guys out there who are building a collection of affordable watches, you have a lot of automatic watches in maybe the $300, $400, $500 range. I think it's really important to be able to understand the basics of putting a watch together, because if you can, you'll be able to save a lot of money when it comes to repairing and maintaining your watches. Oftentimes, if you have a watch that's in like the $300 to $400 price range and you need to get some service on it or repair done, it could very easily cost you more than the watch itself to take it to a watchmaker. But if you learn the process of replacing hands, dials, crystals, and movements, you can kind of maintain your own watch collection for significantly less. And so I think it just makes so much sense to start learning how to do that. So in this video, I'm going to give you an overview of the process I went through to build this watch. This is maybe the third time I think I've made one of these, so I'll go over some of the tricky parts that I've found, and then I'll review the watch itself, give you an idea of how these parts from Namoki Mods came together, what I think of them. I'm going to do a lume test on it as well, because that's something I'm always really curious about, especially if you're getting mod parts. You want to make sure that they, have the same lume brightness as the originals if you are doing modding. So with all that said, let's get into the build. So all of the parts for this build came from Namoki Mods, and one of the things that I really like about them is that they have a whole ton of parts that are built around the SKX platform. So they have tons of cases, bezels, crystals, case backs, bezel inserts that are all compatible with the SKX. And that really simplifies the process of building your own custom watch, because you know that everything's going to work together. And I found that their parts are also very high quality, so you could definitely save money by going kind of the AliExpress route and buying each part individually from there. But then you got to be much more careful to make sure that all the parts you buy are compatible with each other and that they're of good quality. Whereas getting everything straight from Namoki Mods really takes a lot of the guesswork out of the build. For this watch, I wanted to build a dual time watch because I love having the ability to track 2 time zones. But since I live in Japan and have been studying Japanese, I've really also been interested in getting a watch that features kanji numerals. So when I saw this beautiful black and gold kanji bezel, that really gave me the idea of making a dual time dive watch that has kanji numerals on the bezel. And so from that concept, I started piecing out these parts to put this build together. One thing that I always appreciate on dual time watches that use a bezel for the second time zone is a fixed set of 12-hour numerals on the dial that doesn't rotate, that will make it easier to reference what your home time is. The simplest way to do that is to use a dial that has 12-hour Arabic numerals on it, but another way you can do it is by using a chapter ring that has 12-hour numerals on it. And Namoki has this really cool 12-hour kanji chapter ring as well, so I decided to use that in combination with the 12-hour kanji bezel insert. This chapter ring has to be installed into the case before I put the crystal on, and it fits in pretty easily with a little notch that locks it into the right position relative to where the dial will be. Once that's done, I just need to drop in the crystal gasket and then press the crystal. And this is usually one of the hardest parts for me. I'm using a pretty cheap crystal press I got off of Amazon, but with a little bit of patience, it generally gets the job done. On the builds that I've done, I never get like that satisfying crack when it goes in. It's usually just kind of press fit, push and rotate until it's pretty level in there. I feel like this kind of thing just takes a lot of practice, and I don't have that many practice. This is maybe the second or third build I've done like this. But I was able to get the crystal in pretty level this time, so I was pretty happy with that. Now I'm also trying to get this watch as slim as I possibly can, and the SKX is normally a pretty chunky watch. So generally when you're using SKX parts, you wind up with a pretty thick watch. But Nomoki offers a number of options to try and slim that down, so I picked all of the slimmest parts I could. So this is a flat sapphire crystal. I'm going to be pushing in a slim bezel and then a slim case back as well. And with all of that, I'm able to get the total thickness down to about 12.5 millimeters, which isn't bad. It's not super slim, but it's good enough. Now, one thing that I wanted to try was to make this bezel a bi-directional rotating bezel with a click spring. I could have just left the click spring off and it would have been a smoothly rotating 12-hour bezel. I did that the last time and I just really like the feel of the clicks. And so I looked online to see if you can modify a unidirectional click spring to turn it into a bi-directional click spring. And there were people saying you could do it if you bent the spring in a certain way. I tried it and it didn't work. And then after I tried to undo it, I wound up with some pretty terrible bezel action, and I think that was my fault here. At some point in the future, I might try and buy a bidirectional click spring bezel or just a new unidirectional one to get better action. But that was one area where I kind of screwed this up. But anyways, once I got the bezel on and tested that it was level with the crystal, it's time to move on to the dial. So you notice on the bottom of the dial, there's these little sticks that stick out. That's what locks it into the movement. But here you've got two sets of those sticks, and that's to allow you to set the dial in a case that has either a 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock crown. And so you've got to trim off the set that you don't need. Be very careful here. If you trim off the wrong set, then the dial's not going to work in your case. Or it will work, but it'll just be crooked inside the case. This is a Submariner-style case with a 3 o'clock crown, so I removed the 4 o'clock crown feet. Once that's done, the dial can be pretty easily installed onto the movement by just pressing it on. And now it's time for the next really hard part, which is installing the hands. Since this watch has a date complication, the first thing I need to do is find where midnight is on the movement. To do that, you just pull the crown out and go to the time setting and start turning it until just when the date clicks over. That's when you know the movement thinks it's midnight, and then you can set the hour hand accordingly. I just have this little handheld tool for setting the hands, and it works fine for the hour and minute hand. It took a couple tries to get it lined up just right, but not too big of a problem. It's the second hand that always slows me up, and this is another area where I screwed up big time. It had been a while since I'd done this, so I'd kind of forgotten exactly what the mechanism is here. But on the Seiko NH35 movement that I'm using, you have a super tiny little pin coming up out of the center of the movement. The hour and minute hands, they install with this little hole at the base that goes kind of around that pole coming up, but the second hand's a little bit different, and to the naked eye it looks like there's a little hole in the top of that the second hand goes into, but actually there's a super tiny little post coming out of that hole, and that's actually what the second hand mounts on. And so you've got to line it up just right and apply just the right amount of pressure to the second hand to set it on there. And this part usually takes me like 20 minutes to get right. The mistake I made here is that I put way too much pressure when I thought I had it on, and I bent the second hand. And this is one of the most delicate parts of the whole build, and so that second hand is just, I'm not gonna be able to fix it or use it. I can't use that second hand. So I was pretty bummed about that, but thankfully this isn't the first time I've done a build like this. I had some spare parts on hand, and actually I went back to some stuff that I got from DIY Watch Club, which I've done builds with them before, and I had some extra second hands, and I found one that I think matches the design pretty well, actually. The dial here is a traditional Japanese pattern that's supposed to reference archery, and the replacement second hand that I was able to find had an arrowhead on the reverse end of it, so I think it kind of fits the theme. And since it was also made for an NH35 based build, it fit on this movement no problem. With some more care and finesse, I was able to get that one on and get the hands all lined up, and it worked. So I was very happy I didn't actually break anything. For a minute, I thought I had actually broken the movement, and then I would have really been out of luck. But this is all part of the learning process, and I feel like each time I do this, I get a little bit better at it. But once the hands are installed, we're almost done, actually. The next thing we need to do is cut a crown stem and install the crown onto it. So when you get a bare movement like this, it comes with a temporary crown installed, and that'll allow you to set the time and, when you're building the watch, use it there. But once you put it into whatever case you've got to have a crown stem that's cut to fit that case. So first you've got to remove the temporary crown and crown stem from the movement. To do this, you want to make sure that the movement is in the winding position, not in the time setting position. And then there's a super tiny lever you need to push on, and when you do that, that will allow the crown to slide out freely. Next, I take the new crown stem and screw the crown onto it and then insert it into the movement, and you'll see that it does not fit. It's too long. So you need to figure out exactly how much to cut off. I'm using some calipers to get as close as I can. Next, I'm using some pliers to cut the crown stem, and I'm doing this a little bit longer than I think it needs to be, because if I cut the stem too long, I can always cut more. If I cut it too short, then it's just, I'm gonna have to throw it away and get a new stem. So with a little bit of trial and error and then some filing, I'm able to get it down to the right size so that it fits perfectly in the case. But before we're done here, we have to put some adhesive on the end that the crown attaches to, otherwise it will just screw out. And you definitely should use Loctite to do this, or some kind of thread locker. But I didn't have any, and the internet said you could also use clear nail polish to do that. So I ran down to the drugstore, bought some, and used that to secure the crown to the stem. And it did seem to work for a little bit, but after a day or two, the crown did come loose from it. So I wouldn't recommend this method. You know, I ordered the Loctite on Amazon, it came a couple days later, and then I switched to that, and it's been fine ever since. But with all that done, it's pretty easy from here on out. The crown gets installed, the case back gets screwed on, and the last step is just installing the bezel insert. You want to be as careful as possible to make sure everything lines up so that your 12-hour marker is matching up with the 12-hour marker on the dial. And with that, we're pretty much done. All we got to do is install the bracelet, size it up, and try it out on the wrist. And I think this turned out really cool. The concept was a sort of East meets West with this Submariner-style case, but then this heavily Japanese-influenced dial and bezel. I think the red dial with that black and gold bezel and chapter ring really looks sharp. And that dual set of kanji numerals on the chapter ring and the bezel, I think that works great. And it's really fun functionally because you can use it to tell 2 times once you learn how to read the kanji numerals. Most of the problems I have with this watch are my fault. The bezel action is really sloppy, but I can feel if I add some tension to the bezel, like if I push down to it while I'm turning, then I get, I think, what is the expected bezel action. And it still feels like a Seiko bezel. If you used a bezel on an SKX, you know, it doesn't feel like a really sharp, precise, high-end bezel action. It's very springy and clicky. At some point in the future, I'm probably either going to replace the click spring or try and find a bidirectional click spring and try that. I'm a little bummed about breaking the second hand that I was supposed to use, but overall, I'm really happy with the way this one looked. I think it's kind of cool. It's a little bit different. But you know, one of the cool things about building your own watch is, you know, I could change these parts out later if I wanted to. The Jubilee bracelet that I selected with this, it's very high quality. It features screw links for sizing. I think it looks good, but I might wind up swapping it over to a black leather strap. I think that would look really well with the color scheme of this watch. Now, one thing that I'm not particularly impressed with is the performance of the lume. It's okay. And I believe Nomoki has stated that their goal is that these dials and hands should have the same lume performance as an OEM watch from Seiko. On my lume score testing, they didn't quite hit that. So I tested the dial and hands here, coming in at a 6 on my J-score scale, and that's a hair lower than the Seiko 5 Sports, the so-called 5KX, and 40% weaker than my Seiko ProSpec Samurai, which scores a 10. So you're getting pretty similar performance to a Seiko 5 Sports diver, which is okay, it's functional, it'll give you after dark performance, but below what I've come to expect from Seiko's professional level dive watches. The things that I like most about this build are definitely the dial and the bezel insert. The dial has just such a vibrant color and such a cool pattern stamped into it. You get a lot of depth. There's definitely a 3D effect going on here. And I think that traditional Japanese pattern just looks really killer and really matches the black and gold bezel and chapter ring. So overall, I'm really happy with how this watch turned out. It's really unique. It's really custom to exactly what I wanted out of a watch. And that's what makes building your own watch like this so fun. But as far as cost goes, this is where it gets a little bit complicated because the total price list for this build to buy all of these parts from Nomoki Mods came out to around $483 without any discounts. Now, there are some discounts available. I do have an affiliate code. You can get 10% off if you order around the time this video comes out. So check that in the link down below if you're interested. And that's just for the parts. I have to build it and then also have my own tools to assemble it. And at the end of all that, specs-wise, I'm left with a Seiko NH35-powered watch with a sapphire crystal and a case that's rated for 100 meters of water resistance. Now, for that price, I could easily go out and buy a Seiko 5 Sports that's already been assembled that has similar specs. I could definitely go buy a watch off of AliExpress that has much higher specs and is a better level of quality than this watch. And there's a lot of micro brands I could get for the same price that, again, would probably have a slightly higher quality of watch because a professional would be making it instead of me. But there are two huge advantages to doing a build like this yourself. The first is just that ability to completely customize the watch to exactly what you want. You can build a watch that fits your personality, your needs, your style, and there really is a sense of pride and joy in having something that you made yourself, that you customized yourself, that's really tailored to you. And that leads to the second major benefit, which is something I talked about earlier, and that's that you get this experience building watches and maintaining watches. You start to develop a certain skill set that is extremely useful if you're trying to build a budget watch collection. If you can gain the skills to do a build like this, you're also going to be able to repair and maintain other watches in your collection. And in the long run, that could save you a lot of money. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. Let me know what you think of the watch that I put together. Go easy on me. Again, I think it's pretty cool, but yeah, always love to hear what you guys think. And if you got an idea for a cool build that you'd like to see me try out, drop me a comment. Maybe I can get Nomoki Mods to sponsor another video in the future and try and put that together as well. Once again, big thanks to them for sponsoring this video, and there is a discount code down below. I think that's an affiliate code too, so I'll get a little bit of a kickback if you use it, but you also save money. So if you want to do this, please do me a favor and try that out. Also, if you're interested in getting a watch themed t-shirt like this one here, you can pick it up on my website at justthewatch.com. That's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.